right, Warren. Here we are.
Here we are.
Special Christmas episode.
Is this episode 4?
I don't even know. We'll find out. We'll count someday and we'll go back and
This is the next episode.
The next episode
of
the
our
Sirens
podcast.
Project.
Yeah. So my week's been absolutely insane.
Do you want to talk about it? Or
Yeah,
just
sure. Well, part of it does tie into this podcast.
Yes.
At least towards the end.
Yeah.
Last Monday I left for Missouri and got my Class A CDL.
Congrats.
So
you worked hard to do that.
Yeah, that was a big deal for us. So we can, we're fundraising for some bigger equipment, and it's going to require a larger truck.
Yes.
And so the CDL is a necessary thing. So while I was doing the CDL testing and instructing, or the instruction portion, the classroom portion, whatever, and then before the test, found out my son was diagnosed with RSV.
Yep.
Or tested positive. I should say tested positive. Diagnosed sounds like really bad.
Right.
But
it's a thing that goes away.
Right.
Yeah.
So he was he tested positive for RSV. He's kind of struggling with that. So that was on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Then my wife calls me and says we have a busted pipe in the house.
Yeah.
That led to some a little bit of flooding there in one of the bathrooms. 2 bathrooms actually, one upstairs, one downstairs. So that was frustrating.
Yep.
Came back home Wednesday. David still had RSV.
Yep.
Had to watch him. He couldn't go to daycare, and that was a pretty rough day for him, sickness wise.
Right.
We left Thursday to do 3 days of deployment in Douglas, Georgia, with Rebuilding Hope, which was awesome.
Yes.
And then we came home Saturday, early Sunday morning. David fractured his skull by falling, and we had to go to Scottish Rite for 2 days. Got back home last night, but he's doing really well. Doctors aren't super concerned with him or anything like that. But that was another very stressful thing. So
it's been back to back for you.
7 days, man. It's been wild, but God is good.
Absolutely.
And super thankful. Honestly, it kind of brought our whole family closer together for sure.
Yeah.
Makes you really appreciate just time together.
Yeah.
And stuff
what
like
you
that.
have.
Yeah.
Sure
absolutely.
Does.
So, but the CDL portion, like I said, kind of ties into the podcast. I had to drive to Missouri for that and pass through Mayfield on the way there and on the way back, and saw the December 10th, 2021 tornado damage path, the quad state, which actually wasn't a quad state. We thought maybe it was going to be at the beginning, but it did have a successful cycle in Tennessee. Yeah. And so there's a little gap in the path.
Yeah. It's interesting if you go back and look at the path.
Right. It's a little blip.
See the blips. Yeah.
Which would have been crazy if, it's a crazy tornado either way you slice it, but that would have been truly a record breaker had it gone through 4 states. Yeah. But regardless, the impacts were the same. Yeah. And driving through Mayfield, it was pretty humbling, to see the damage that's still present 3 years later. Yeah. Even in those smaller towns that we had helped in as well.
So you went not just through Mayfield, but didn't you go through?
Went through Benton. Yeah, I didn't get to Dawson Springs, a little too far off the interstate, or off my path to and from. But stopped in Benton, and then 69. Just kind of parallel 69, 24. Those interstates down there where it had done a lot of damage. But going through Mayfield, I kind of had this idea. We usually film on Tuesdays, right? And December 10th, today is the 3-year anniversary of that tornado. So I figured it'd probably be, kind of cool if we go back and look at that tornado, talk about our response, and then, I'll talk a little bit about what it was like going back through there and one of the encounters I had with someone who was directly affected by that tornado, which was kind of a cool story. But we'll break into it. I got the National Weather Service summary pulled up right here. So I don't want to get any of my facts wrong. But so it was rated EF4, 190 mile an hour winds.
That's Mayfield.
Yeah, and I mean a lot of other areas too, like Bremen had EF4 damage indicators. I think Dawson Springs had EF4 damage indicators. So there were several EF4 damage indicators along that path. Right. It's 165.7 miles long. Would have been over 200 miles long had it not occluded. Over in Tennessee, and at its widest point, it was 1.13 miles. It was a stout tornado. It also unfortunately killed 57 people. This one tornado did. And this particular part of the path. The other path is considered a separate tornado, and that also led to fatalities.
That's
in Arkansas, Missouri.
You're talking
just went through Jonesboro and some of those really rural areas, just in northeast Arkansas. And then it also injured, they say 508 to 533 people. There's a little bit of a range there. And, we don't like to brush over the injuries because a lot of these are life-altering injuries. You talk about paralysis, amputations. I mean, it's pretty dark stuff, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
So, it was a super bad tornado. I remember that night. It's my father-in-law's birthday on December 10th, and we were celebrating, his birthday, but we knew there was a moderate risk. Considered chasing actually that day,
right? But
because of my father-in-law's birthday, wanted to spend time with the family and everything like that. So I was keeping an eye on the radar and stuff, and it started out as a small cluster of showers, just northeast of Little Rock, Arkansas. It took a little while to get going, but it had that right off the bat. It had that structure, really long, elongated kind of bean-shaped structure, which was primed to turn into something once it got going, and the environment was pretty prolific, especially for December. And so it just kept track of it. Finally congealed, started showing signs of rotation, and put its first tornado down just, I think, pretty close to Jonesboro. I think a little bit southwest of Jonesboro, but even had twin tornadoes on it at one point, right early in its life cycle. So it was
across the Mississippi,
right? Across
which is
the Mississippi.
Not something that happens often.
No, and it was one of those supercells that's all by itself. Not competing with any kind of warm, moist air from other storms sucking, moisture out of the air and stuff like that. There was no impedance to its ability to strengthen. And while that was the focus tornado, we also had several other notable tornadoes from that outbreak, and we responded to another one at the same time that went through Dresden and just north of Clarksville as an EF3. Totally separate tornado, but that was the second longest path of that outbreak. So I mean, it's just a crazy day. Tuned into Ryan Hall. We watched Ryan Hall that night. The moment it hit Mayfield, we caught that correspondence. And
I remember one of the first things we saw was the candle factory there in Mayfield. Like that was quickly on the news cycle.
It was
talking about that after.
There's several fatalities at the candle factory. Unfortunately, we're going to circle back to that. But it was kind of one of those things. Happened on a Friday. Saturday, I had a family gathering, and I knew Saturday, looking at the damage from Dawson Springs, Mayfield, Benton, those types of areas, that we were going to be responding. Even Dresden, that started coming in. Had family just 30 minutes outside of Dresden. The damage path actually passed about 3 miles south of their house.
Did it really?
And so I just knew we were gonna call this a deployment for sure. And so we decided to deploy and get our stuff together and start heading out. We linked up with Reach Out Worldwide for this trip, and Inspiritus. This is the first time we really worked with Inspiritus at a close level and developed that relationship.
They helped get us housing up there in Murray.
So we were in a good central location, kind of between Dresden and Benton. That's where we did a lot of our work. It was probably some of the worst damage I've ever seen. We've seen some pretty nasty tornadoes. Some other EF4s, like Beauregard, was really bad. Noonan was pretty bad. But this one was it was EF4, but for such a long portion of the track, and it seemed like every town that we went into, there was just catastrophic damage.
I specifically remember Dresden. Like the town was almost cut in half. Like you'd be on one side of the town, and it just seemed like everything was normal. And then just a diagonal line kind of cuts across Main Street, and then the other half of the town. And in the other direction from there, just devastation.
Complete devastation. We showed up, I think, in Benton first. If I remember correctly, we linked up with the fire department there. And they told us to go check on some of these roads and stuff. And That's where
near the interstate.
Yeah,
I remember
right
we were
off
like
the interstate.
winding,
Yeah,
those not access roads, but the roads that used to be there before they built the interstate through there that were cut off from
absolutely
crossing the interstate.
Yeah, I think the first homeowner we came across was Carl, Mr. Carl. And that was a really unique story because, the whole community kind of sat in this valley.
Yeah.
A lot of trailers, a lot of mobile homes. And Mr. Carl had the only site-built house out of that entire area.
Yeah.
And we got to talking with him. His roof was ripped off completely. Some of the exterior walls had failed, lots of tree damage. Every single one of the trailers around his homestead were totally gone. Parts of the frame and stuff were in the trees and everything. And it was just that whole valley looked like a disaster zone. I'll try to throw a picture up of what that valley looked like. But it was interesting because Carl said every person in that community 10 minutes before the tornado hit left their trailers and went to his basement.
House. Yeah.
And everybody survived. Had they had not gone to that basement, I mean, who knows what would have happened in that valley. But
I mean, just the image of standing up, like where you got off the main road, turned off onto the dirt road that went down into that valley where all those homes were. Like that right turn is a lasting memory for me.
Right.
Like just seeing that, because you couldn't quite see it from the road.
Yeah.
You've been winding around, kind of trailing alongside the interstate, and then all of a sudden you took a right turn down a hill. I remember being sort of forested over here, and then to the right.
Yeah.
Just looked down, and it was just devastation.
There's like confetti down there. Like everything was just blowing up. We went from that road. I helped Mr. Carl clear some trees, pull some of his shed off. I think there was some tractor vehicles or whatever that we helped to get access to and stuff like that. Went just down the road half a mile basically to that small neighborhood just off the interstate that had a lot of damage. One of the craziest survival stories came from that neighborhood, and I'll throw a picture of that up as well, where there's a staircase and it's got like 3 or 4 stairs on it. And it was the staircase leading up from the garage to the laundry room. And I remember the guy's name. His name was Tim. We're talking, and he said he was out of town for business. His wife was home alone. They were keeping track of the tornado. Wife calls him and says, I'm really scared. There's a tornado headed this way. And they were deciding where they were going to go. And it was between 2 locations. It was between one of the closets in the hallway, which is a great place to be if you don't have a basement, or the laundry room, next to one of the bathrooms that didn't have any windows.
Right.
And they went back and forth and decided to go to the laundry room, or decided to put her in the laundry room. And so he stays on the phone with her this entire time. And she's saying, I think it's getting closer. The wind's picking up. I hear,
all the signs.
The roars starting to show up, in the distance. And he said all he could hear was glass breaking, her screaming, and the phone cut off. And he left from Illinois on his business trip.
Just started driving.
To drive down there to make sure his wife was okay, because he had no idea. She ended up surviving, and that was the only part of the house
that survived.
I remember. And it came down to that split-second decision of which location, was she going to choose.
Is the safest one,
And, I mean, you had a 50-50 shot between 2 really good locations. And she chose right. And it was just... I got chills thinking about that. Like, my goodness. Like, it is a crazy picture of that little staircase that she was up underneath. So I'll pop that up. But and then, we went through that neighborhood, pulled some trees off of houses, felled some nasty stuff. But we were kind of twofold, right? We had a team down here in Georgia doing something crazy that we've never done before, and probably not going to ever do again because it's just not our lane. But then you and Brian Weeks, were doing something totally different at this point in time with the second tornado. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that aspect?
Well, you remember, so after the tornado, a bunch of local churches and groups, and I think First Baptist Woodstock was like the ground zero for this. It was WSB. I think, like, named First Baptist Woodstock a drop-off location for supplies, because it happened near Christmas time and it affected so many people. There was an immediate response, and then gosh, the details are fuzzy, but suddenly we were collecting supplies. Like they stopped and suddenly His Hands Church was collecting supplies to take. And we had no way to get that stuff there.
Right.
To who was it that stepped in? They had a big rig.
Yeah, Rosanna. That was her name. And her family, they go to this church.
Okay.
And CBS 46 ended up picking us up as part of the relief efforts here in Georgia. And that's kind of where we started gaining some momentum here. And we had a whole separate team in the lobby receiving these donations.
Receiving and sorting donations, loading that up on a truck. So we get there and we have a surplus we actually had some of the stuff on the truck, but then there was a big rig that was like, where are we going to drop this off? And I remember in that neighborhood in Benton taking some diapers down on the skid steer, down the hill to the back of the neighborhood to a woman's house who had a young kid who they couldn't get out to get what they needed. So I remember riding on the bed of the skid steer with like a box of supplies to take that down the hill to her. But so we were kind of twofold. We had, where are we going to take this giant, enclosed trailer full of
53
supplies? Where's that going to go?
Yeah.
Plus, what else is out there that needs to be done? So I remember Brian and I left Murray. We were staying at the church in Murray. We left and went south towards Dawson to
Dresden.
To Dresden. Yeah, I get all the towns confused.
Well, I know there's so many of them.
There's so many of them. But so we head to Dresden, and we wind up at what we've been told is the operations center.
Right.
And we show up. And it's in the side lobby of a church, and it's absolute chaos.
And what was the name of that place? Was it Be the Village?
Well, this isn't even that yet.
You're not there yet.
No, not even there yet. I'll try to keep it really short. It's a long story of God doing some really amazing work. But so we show up there and kind of with twofold, like, where are we going? First, we showed up at the jail because we were told go to the sheriff's office. So we go there. We actually walked in, and it was like parole check-in day.
Yeah.
At the detention facility, and we go in.
So you almost got checked in, man.
We were like, we were told quickly, this is not the right place. It's across the street. So we went over there to this church, and it was chaos in there. I mean, you had volunteers who were trying to set up, take in work orders, take in requests for work. And so immediately we knew, okay, there's work that desperately needs to be done here. And we had kind of seen it. We drove in. When you drive in, you don't see the damage path between, down across the state line between Murray down to Dresden.
Right.
So we didn't really know how bad it was.
Yeah.
And then I noticed there's a whiteboard, and there's a guy who's got a whiteboard full of supply stuff needed and then work orders.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, hey, I just walk up to him like, what are we going to do with a trailer full of supplies? Where is that going? And he's like, I don't even know, but I've got some coming too. We don't know where it's all going to go. Except I keep hearing about this Be the Village place, and it's over, it's down the road over here. And sure enough, it was just down the hill, around the corner, and it was an old FedEx facility. So it was a big warehouse. And Be the Village is a group that works with foster families to support them with supplying clothes, toys, blankets, anything they need to support them, because unfortunately there is a huge need in that area for support for tornado. Forget the tornado. That's something we could talk about for sure. Forget that a tornado's just happened. These people are already in need in this community. Mm-hmm. So we were told, go to Be the Village. So Brian and I drive over there. Now, again, truck hasn't even left really Atlanta yet.
Right, we're still organizing.
Right, it's still being organized back here. We go to Be the Village. Walk in, more chaos. There are two women at the little office, and there's people driving in to do their normal pickup of stuff, of supplies. And now the whole community is being told, go to Be the Village, because they already had some infrastructure. Everybody there. There's a line of cars waiting to pick up diapers, toiletries, clothing, because everybody's lost so much at that point. And they're just doing everything they can to feed it and intake. One of the lasting memories was there's a milk truck parked outside. Some local dairy had brought their milk truck. They didn't even have and they had it plugged in.
It's like no refrigerator.
They didn't even have refrigerators for all this. And they're pulling milk out, giving it to people. So it was a really chaotic scene. And I walk in. And I just kind of nuzzled my way up to the front of the line. I wasn't trying to be rude or cut. I just walked up to the lady that I said, who's in charge here? And she's like, this lady right over here. I walked right over her and I said, ma'am, I'm here to help. What is your greatest need? Like, what do you need in this moment now? She goes, I have nowhere to put any of the stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, I got you. And I just left.
Yeah.
I said, here's my name. Here's my number.
We'll be back.
We will be back in a couple hours. And Brian and I went to the Lowe's in Paris, Tennessee. Right. This is where Reach Out Worldwide comes in.
Right.
Reach Out Worldwide they're sponsored by Lowe's.
Yeah.
And so I called Merritt and I'm like, hey, how can you help us out? Before we know it, we'd bought the entire Lowe's out of all
the shelves
shelving.
And bins too. You guys bought a ton of those yellow
shelving,
top
totes and shelves. And so we filled Brian's van that he had at the time.
The Sprinter van.
Completely full and drove back and showed up. And we spent the afternoon building shelves with them.
Yeah.
And that became a whole thing. We met so many people in the community. We're able to help them restock shelves, kind of learned the workflow of what they were trying to do. And that became its own kind of side project. While you're out cutting trees and clearing houses, we're over here, providing supplies. Well, as we came back, I talked to them a little more and found out, okay, we can take all the supplies that you're bringing from Woodstock, Georgia, up here. And so that all really worked out well.
Yeah.
I'll end the story there. It worked out great. We met some great people. We're able to connect Be the Village with Inspiritus.
Right. That was another networking.
All of what we do is about connecting people to what they need, whether it's
part of our mission.
Right. If we can't support it, we're going to try to connect you to who does and who can. So they established kind of a long-term relationship throughout the relief effort because Inspiritus was going to be there for a long time.
They were doing a huge toy drive, I remember, and needed a location to drop toys. And what better place than a foster care support organization that knows every family with kids, and so that was such a cool correlation there. I remember that, being such a big part of Inspiritus.
Yeah, one of my favorite pictures is it was a selfie I took with the two ladies that were running it that
Sandra
day.
was one of them.
And then she ended up going to work for Inspiritus for a period of time.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
So it was a great day. It was just the smiles on the faces that these people came to bring them supplies, came all the way from Woodstock to there, and the connections that were made through that. I remember even the next day, Brian and I went back to Lowe's. We hit the Murray Lowe's.
Yeah.
You remember we all went to Cracker Barrel for breakfast, went to the Lowe's across the street, bought out all of the Murray Lowe's shelves and tubs, and took a whole bunch of us back there.
Yeah.
Because, again, circle back all the way to the response facility. We now knew where the work orders were, where the work needed to be done. So we all kind of moved our operation down to Dresden at that point.
Yeah.
And it was
which worked out well because
crazy.
The weather ended up kind of working against us north in, Benton and Dawson Springs. Cold and rainy. And it was, our machines weren't doing so hot and all that mud and everything. So we took a break, went to Dresden before returning back to the Mayfield path.
Right.
But, bringing up the toys and everything, that reminds me just kind of like, every tornado is catastrophic. It doesn't matter if it's EF1, EF4, like to somebody that is their, that's a pivotal point in their life,
Something they'll never forget.
But when you get tornadoes around the holidays, like around Christmas, it kind of hits differently. I remember in Benton, we were working in that neighborhood, and it was kind of surreal because everybody's, who had their house destroyed, all of their Christmas presents, Christmas trees and everything were all over the place, and it was just kind of crazy to think that, the night before may had a fire going, Christmas trees lit up, presents under the tree. Everybody's, anticipating, looking forward, to the holidays and spending time with one another. And then the next day, there was this little girl, probably 4 or 5 years old, walking through her front yard, picking up, what was left of Christmas decorations. And you're just like, man, it just kind of hits different, especially around the holidays. And so it was a particularly hard tornado, just because there's so much loss. And holidays are supposed to be something, it's bright and you look forward to. And, in some ways, like, the holidays are forever tainted from that point on, because there's always this reminder of what happened, and so it was, it was just a really sad situation there. But we spent a couple of days in Benton and then went south to Dresden. That worked out super well. Reach Out Worldwide stayed with us. We had 2 skid steers, a big Sawyer team, and we just went to town. And then the last day we went back to Dawson Springs to do, because we had initially gone to Dawson Springs. Like, the first day, they were giving us a lot of trouble, like, getting in.
Well, and that, it's important to say that happens a lot.
Right, it does.
They don't know what to do.
Right.
I mean, yes, they've trained, yes, whatever, but all of a sudden, response groups come in and they don't know how to send people out to go find out from the community, what is your need, what is your need, what do you need done. And so it's very chaotic those first couple days.
Super chaotic. And I think, our truck, looking kind of like a power truck company or truck, a power company truck helps us in some ways, because it got us in, I
specifically remember on the way
they're stopping everybody, and then
I was on the phone trying to talk to the sheriff there and couldn't get through to him. And we got up to a roadblock and in Benton, and was like, oh, I hope we can get through.
Might be done, because they were stopping everybody.
They were stopping, keeping you out of the town.
Right.
Gosh, now my brain is just going with these. You remember the baseball field, the baseball park there on the left side of the road? Oh. But just the pulling in to there, we were just like, well, we're either getting in or we're not getting.
They didn't even stop as they waved us through.
They just waved us through, and that was.
I was like, man, that was our breakthrough in Dawson Springs. But we circled back around to Dawson Springs.
And, you're right. It was Dawson Springs. See, I can't keep them all straight.
It's that portion of the deployment was still cold and rainy. We were still with Reach Out Worldwide, doing some SAW stuff. But we, there's still somebody missing on that street that we were working in Dawson Springs. You had left the day before. And, we were about halfway through our work day when an excavator operator, probably, it was on the same street we were, but, several houses down, probably 5 or 6 houses down, I guess recovered, the last missing body there from that community or that neighborhood. And, we had to stop what we were doing. Everybody stopped, and the fire department and coroner came down, and dealt with that situation. So it was like, just really, that was kind of surreal, because, you're a couple of days in to this response effort, but everything's still so fresh. That's how widespread this was. And so that was, it was definitely a humbling part of the trip, And then we also met Adam Benner, who's a storm chaser from Ohio, and he came down and helped us out. It was the first time that he got to work with us, and that was a really cool moment. He put in a lot of work down there, and I was really appreciative of I always love when we see storm chasers who chased the tornado, saw it in real time, come back out and support these communities. I think it's such a cool full circle kind of moment. So
it's a big deal, because this is called the Mayfield tornado.
Right.
We didn't do any work
in Mayfield. Right.
Right. And so there's a couple of factors there. First of all, that's just its largest damage point or whatever. Right. But it kind of speaks to what we're dealing with even now with still the Hurricane Helene damage. And what's left over is that a lot of times everybody, when the first name kind of hits the news cycle, that's where so much of the relief effort goes. Yeah. And I think some of these smaller communities that we were able to serve are impacted almost even, hard to say, greater.
Right.
Not only did they have a disaster,
but they don't get the response.
They don't get the response or the attention. So we were able to do so much in those communities while allowing larger groups who were all staying. Remember that church we were staying at in Murray? You know, you have a lot of larger disaster response groups that are able to go take care of
these larger population centers.
Larger population centers.
Did you like that word?
One in a while. Yeah. But and you know, same thing's kind of happening with Helene. You know, while we focused our response still on South Georgia, is the attention and the span of the scope of the work effort moved really to where the news was.
Yeah.
Asheville, Boone, those areas up in North Carolina. And, you know, went to Douglas this past week, and there was still so much work that had not been touched.
Yeah.
And that was 2 months ago.
Yeah, and work orders, even in those small communities, are coming in organically. Like, Bill was at Tractor Supply wearing it says volunteer on the disaster back, response on the back, and someone comes up to him, you know, we're just buying chains, you know, for saws or whatever, and he, the homeowner comes up, hey, are you guys doing work here in Douglas? Yeah, and then it snowballs, we end up working there. You know, it's like there's still a lot of fresh hurt there.
Absolutely.
Even though it's been almost, you know, three and a half
We
months.
talk about that a lot, that the disaster doesn't go away.
No.
It's always going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
There's rebuilding, there's hope, there's what comes after, but it's a pivotal moment in these people's lives that they never forget.
Yeah.
Which I think, good transition there to tell me your story about going back to Mayfield last week.
So, you know, mentioned earlier, I went to go get my CDL in Sykeston, Missouri, and it takes me right through basically that damage path, really close to Mayfield. And so I knew, you know, when I scheduled the CDL test, I scheduled it in, I think August, for, you know, that first week of December. I knew I wanted to go through Mayfield again just to kind of see. I'm a tornado history nerd.
Yeah.
You know, I love driving damage paths. I love, you know, just kind of seeing the communities after the fact, you know, even if it's decades after, see if there's any signs that, you know, a tornado was here at one point in time. So Mayfield's still kind of fresh in the grand scheme of things, you know. And so I thought it'd be a really cool opportunity to go up there and check it out. And drove through Benton on the way up there. Okay. Stopped at the houses that we actually helped. I stopped at Mr. Carl's house. He got a brand new house.
Nice.
All the trailers are replaced down there. The valley's completely clean. You can't even see any debris. Man, they did an incredible job down there.
That's awesome.
Looks like a brand new place, really. A lot less trees than there was before. Yeah. However, everything looks like it's kind of honestly hard to tell that a tornado went through there, other than the fact that you go through a forest, and then it's rolling hills instead of instead of a forest.
Yeah.
And then we went to the neighborhood in Benton that I was talking about, where that lady survived in that staircase. Yeah. The house is totally gone now. No one ever rebuilt.
I mean, there's so many stories just
from that neighborhood,
that street, in that neighborhood.
So they, they demoed that house, has not been rebuilt. The house across the street from that, demoed, not rebuilt.
Wow.
The house that we went to pull that tree off.
Talking about the 2-story one that we had
the tree on it, cut from inside and everything like that. That house has been bulldozed as well. But the house next to that, where we did a lot of tree felling and cleanup, looks totally fine now. Yeah. They repaired the roof and everything. Looks like nothing even happened there. So that was really encouraging to see. So there's still evidence, you know.
Of course.
I drove through Mayfield at night, so it's kind of hard to tell. You know, there's obviously like a lot of construction going on, a lot of slabbed lots and stuff like that. So, you know, I couldn't really see. I was like, you know, after the test, I'll circle around, come back through Mayfield during the daytime where I can see a little more. Decided to stop at the candle factory on the way back, off 69. And stopped in a neighborhood across the street from the candle factory, or across the interstate from the candle factory.
Cardinal Lane, I think.
Something like that. And I think there were some fatalities there, unfortunately. There's a couple of slabbed homes. There's actually, where a mobile home used to be, there's concrete stairs. Yeah. There's a sidewalk, concrete stairs that go to nothing. Yeah. You know, and so it's kind of just like one of those reminders, you know, something happened. There's a home here at one point. There's memories. There's a family here at one point. Now, you know, what happened there, I'm not sure, but there's stairs to nowhere. So that was kind of crazy to see. But went to the candle factory where the slab still is, behind the John Deere distribution center there. and pulled in, tons of sheet metal still in the trees. Oh, yeah. So like, I mean, there's parts of the roof from that candle factory still lodged up in some of these big oak trees and some pine trees. And parked the car, walked up to the slab. You can still see some carpet on the slab, some tile, some plumbing. There's some electrical still there. Everything's wire nutted off, but like where the street lights were, the poles were they totally shredded. The concrete post is still there, and the base of the light is still there, but it's been all twisted off. And there's no light there, So there's still a lot of evidence. But when I got there, there was another gentleman walking like on the slab of the candle factory, just walking around. Himself. And I thought that was kind of peculiar. Obviously you could tell he was obviously there to either just look at the damage, or you could tell he was like reminiscing about something, just like his demeanor. He might even listen to this podcast, but I'll tell you who it was in just a second. But so I was just walking around doing my thing, taking some pictures of some flowers on the slab, as memorial to where that candle factory was, and there was several fatalities in that candle factory, unfortunately. So I walk up the hill, look at some of the trees where the sheet metal is, and then come back down. And we both weren't really paying attention to where each other was, and then we ended up kind of next to each other.
Like, had he seen you walking around?
I think he saw me, but we were pretty far away, right? And so we just naturally kind of gravitated toward each other, and we made eye contact, and he asked how I was doing. I said, good. How are you? And he's like, I'm hanging in there. I'm here, kind of thing. And I just asked him, I said, did you work here? And he said, yeah, I did work here at the candle factory. And asked him, how long he had been working there. And he's like, well, I was there 4 months before the tornado hit. And then he showed me where the bathroom, like where the plumbing was coming out of the ground. He's like, we all huddled here in the bathroom when it hit and all this stuff. And asked him, if he had lost any friends, through this tragedy. And he said, yeah, he lost 3 friends at the candle factory. And then one of his close friends lost some family members in the neighborhood that's across 69 there, where I was just visiting, and kind of checking out. And so we just got to talking kind of about what that night was like and everything like that. And you can tell he's still processing, what had happened 3 years ago. And just asked about his family and everything like that. And we were, just small talk, and then, asked if I could pray for him, we prayed together and everything like that. And he was just saying, he comes here, once a year to kind of pay respects to what had happened. And it was just such a beautiful moment. Yeah. To be there with him. And, to me, it's one of those God stories, because the things that had to line up for us to have this moment together,
one single moment
at the candle factory. I mean, you can't predict that. You can't like fabricate something like that, right? I mean, like I planned the CDL months in advance. Like, what are the chances that I come through Mayfield on that day on the way back? At that time, my test got out at a certain time. I ate lunch at a certain time. I get to the candle factory at a certain time, with this guy
that's
here.
You, and to think, okay, he got up that morning. Maybe he had to go to work for a while, or maybe he worked a night shift. He gets done.
Right.
He's feeling somber. He's thinking about this. He decides today's going to be the day that I'm going to go remember my friends,
right,
and pay respects to where we used to work that's no longer here. And
it was such a cool moment.
There you both are.
There we both are, and got to share this awesome moment. And so I prayed for him and everything, and then found out his name was Chance, and I was like, what are the chances? Like, it's like cheesy, but what are the chances we're here? We actually found each other, or I found him on Facebook, and I just it brightened my day a ton, and I hope it brightened his, but it was just such a powerful moment, and it just kind of solidified like what we do and what all disaster response organizations do is so important. Yeah. And I think it's good to check into these communities even after we've gone for years, to come back and just see what's going on, and see how people are doing. There are signs of rebuilding and everything in Mayfield, and Benton, and Dawson Springs, and all these places. There's still a lot of evidence that something happened. There's still a lot of hurt. and a lot of unanswered questions that only God knows, and I'm just super thankful as an organization, and this kind of solidified that I'm just super thankful that we had the opportunity to go into these communities during and after such a tragic moment in history, to just kind of hold their hand and be a shoulder to cry on, if anything else. And it's the Mayfield tornado was just, I think, super impactful for us in a lot of different. So many stories came out of that. And it's still one of those that I think about a lot.
Yeah, a lot of lives were changed, like good and bad.
Yeah,
but I think that one of the resounding kind of takeaways from that deployment and that trip is just, even when you're kind of operating outside your normal workflow,
right? Supplies for us is like, ooh.
Supply drops is not our thing, and and that fell on me, and I'm like, all right, here we go. Where are we going to put all of this? Is that the Lord's still working, and all you have to do is just trust it, and trust that He is, and He made all those pieces fall in place. All those things happened, and all those things that allowed the people in our community to do good for people they don't know, people they've never seen, and then to have it turn out that they not only impacted an entire community, but their lives were changed later because of that. That they, it just kind of blows my mind that God does that. Because, we didn't know what we were doing or what we were walking into. And I knew we had to find a place for that.
Yeah.
And I walked in and I saw that board that says supplies. Here's the address. And I'm like, is that where we take supplies? Because it said, what was it called? God, my brain. What was the place called?
Be the Village?
Be the Village.
Yeah.
I almost said
Bridge the Gap.
Bridge the Gap. Wow, which is in Noonan. Be the Village. And it just said BTV, and then here's the address. Yeah. And I was like, is that where we take supplies? Because, I'm not kidding. We have a lot of supplies that need to go somewhere. Right. And sure enough, a couple days later, the trucks arrived. Yeah. We gave them the address of where to go. That's what kind of set in motion for me the idea that what you do after a disaster, it doesn't have to be a lot.
No.
Even just a little can have a huge impact and really bless people's lives.
Yeah, I think about that phrase. It's kind of corny, but it's so true. It's like that God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called, and that's kind of how I feel every time we go out, He gives us the answers and lays everything out for us, as it's happening. A lot of times we don't have a great idea of what we need to do, where we need to go, because it's chaos, right? Yeah. And you just got to be attentive to that. And
even so far after storms, trusting that He's going to put us in the paths
like Douglas. And rebuilding.
Everybody we helped down there just this past week was.
They're so grateful.
We helped them for a reason. It was timed exactly so that we could be the ones to help them in their time.
Absolutely. And so, just the anniversary's today. This won't be posted on the anniversary. It'll be a couple of days after. But as you're watching this, just continue to pray for those communities in Mayfield and Dresden, Benton, Dawson Springs, Bremen. I could list 100 communities from that tornado outbreak. But it's a hard time for them. And just, it's been 3 years, but it doesn't matter. It's important to continue to remember those people who were impacted by that. So it was just such an awesome deployment, one that we will never forget, and one that shaped our organization. So
created a lot of new partnerships for us in a lot of ways too.
It did.
It kind of, thinking back, kind of showed me we're not alone in this, and we don't, as Sirens Project, don't have to operate alone.
Right.
We can rely on the relationships and the connections that we have with other groups who do other things to have more impact.
Right.
That's been a big thing. We've definitely put that to work over the last couple of years.
Utilize those networked relationships, and I think we're better for it. So. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, this has been great topic. Yeah, it was cool to kind of go down memory lane on that December 10th tornado outbreak. We're just gonna keep trucking. We got some things coming up. I think we're gonna do a workshop hangout We got the Norcop Christian School trip coming up in January.
Yep.
So we're going back down to Valdosta at Camp Tigart, doing some work down there from Hurricane Helene, get the high schoolers involved.
Yeah.
And then after that, we'll do some more training, and we'll see what tornado season, has planned. So, as always, we'll keep our eyes to the sky. But hope everybody has an awesome Christmas. I don't know if we'll do another episode before the end of the year. But if not, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to everybody. We love you guys. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Yeah. Thank you.